Good afternoon, Good Shepherd. It's Wednesday, October 27th, 2021, and we are winding down October, looking at Halloween coming up and All Saints Day and all sorts of things. So a few announcements about some stuff coming up and then some other thoughts. Next coming Sunday is Youth Sunday. Fifth Sunday of the month is Youth Sunday at Good Shepherd, and we're looking forward to celebrating Youth Sunday here in the building for the first time in quite some time. We'll have youth reading the lessons, some youth musicians and youth preaching. It will be fun and pride-making for us as we see the wonderful things that our young people can do. That will be at the 10:30 service. As usual, we will have our 7:45 service that will also be Zoomed and posted to Facebook as well. So you're welcome to do that. Between those two services will be our Faith Forum, and we will have some folks who were at the most recent diocesan convention talk about their experiences, why they serve as delegates to convention, what they heard, what they learned, and that as well will be Zoomed so that folks can actually, at least one person can participate in that from afar. But also so that folks who aren't going to be able to drive in can do that. And the link to that Faith Forum will be in the e-news that will go out tomorrow. In November, Deacon Nadine Pope, our deacon, will be offering us a 3-week series on theology and spiritual practices of gratitude. It seemed very appropriate to do that during the month of November as we anticipate Thanksgiving. The last Sunday of November is the first Sunday of Advent, and we will launch into a different Faith Forum program at that point, and there will be more information about that coming down the pike. So that's what's coming up in the next several weeks, and hope that you are able to take part in a lot of that. It's been a pretty full fall. The Altars in the World program was great, and the 2 hikes that we had were great. We're going to have another walk on the 13th of November. This will be a morning walk focusing on birds, and it will be down at the Carson Nature Center in Littleton, all flat. As I say, ducks don't hide in the tops of trees, so it'll be a good introduction to waterfowl as we move into the winter. So again, more information will be forthcoming on that. Some thoughts. The daily office lectionary found in the back of the prayer book is a 2-year cycle that gets people to read through most of the Bible, not every passage, but through most of the Bible. And it's on a 2-year cycle. So every 2 years, the same things come up. And one of the things that surprised me this fall has been how many of the lessons that are set to be read from the Hebrew scriptures are all about restoration. They have to do with the Jewish people being deported to Babylon and then coming back to Judah and Jerusalem, and being faced with the challenge of rebuilding Jerusalem and rebuilding the temple that was destroyed. And just in the last couple of days, one of the readings from the book of Ezra, which talks all about that rebuilding process, was appointed for reading. And I was just so struck by sort of the similarities of how we are experiencing this time of sort of coming back to church physically as a congregation after being away for a while and feeling like our foundations had been shaken or destroyed, and coming back. And the book of Ezra tells about the people coming back and starting to rebuild on the foundations, near the foundations of the temple that had been destroyed, and how some of the folks who'd come back remembered what it was like, and they were weeping because it's not quite what it was. Other people coming back from their time in Babylon and weeping because they were just so excited that this was being rebuilt, and then some people just shouting for joy. And I see those experiences being mirrored as folks come back to Good Shepherd. And I just want to say, that that's the way it is that we're experiencing rebuilding. We're seeing some old things that are being put back together, and we're seeing some old things that we're not so sure if they're going to come back together. We're seeing some new things that are happening. That's part of this rebuilding process. And it's been so helpful for me to be reminded that the Jewish people were going through this thousands of years ago as they came back from Babylon. And one of the things that made me brought some of this home to me a little bit was, we're starting to look at moving towards the end of the year, which means looking at Christmas and what that's going to look like. And I'm still not exactly sure, but it's not going to look like what we've expected. Certainly it won't look like last year. We'll be able to do some things in place. I know that plans are already underway for Living Nativity. You may have seen an announcement asking for volunteers for that in the last e-news, and we'll keep seeing those. So the Living Nativity, which happened last year during sort of lockdown, gave us a wonderful opportunity to be together in person outdoors, which is what it will be this year as well. But it provides some way to celebrate our time together and to give something to the community. We gave something really valuable to the community, and we're going to be able to do that again this year. But we will be able to have some Christmas services in place. We and the staff and vestry have decided that some of those things that we have done in the past, pre-pandemic, will be scaled back. The number of services will be scaled back, partly because we don't have all of the resources that we had before. And we aren't sure how many people will be willing and able to come back because of COVID and the pandemic. I was talking yesterday with somebody who's well versed in what we're doing, what's going on in terms of infection rates and all of those kinds of things. And he reminded me that right now we're at the levels that we were at last Christmas, even though it had dipped down, it's coming back up. So we're hoping that we don't have further restrictions, but we don't know. So, there are going to be some significant differences come this Christmas. We're starting to look at staffing, but we aren't sure where the budget is going to be in terms of stewardship, and that puts a little crimp on what we can plan for and interview for, not knowing whether or not we're going to have the same kind of resources. And so, it's a hard time. Rebuilding is hard. As the Jews were rebuilding Jerusalem, they didn't have all of the resources. They were aided by some locals and by some outside funding, but they still didn't have everything that they had before. And so they were struggling to say, what's the best of what we've had in the past that we carry forward? Can't carry everything forward. So that's kind of where we are. And it's a hard time. I recognize that, but it's a great time. We are learning all sorts of new things. We're engaging in all sorts of new things. We have new folks coming through the door. There's some exciting stuff going on. And I just want to conclude by saying, those of us who were reading Barbara Brown Taylor's book, An Altar in the World, were struck a couple of times where she talking about finding herself in a difficult position for one reason or another, and then saying, this could be a spiritual practice. Finding myself in this difficult place could be a spiritual practice, and sort of entered into it with the idea that God could speak to us in sort of these challenging times in ways that God may not speak to us in normal times. And so what are we hearing from God individually or corporately as we struggle with masks, as we struggle with vaccines and boosters, as we struggle with changing service schedule times and all of those things? What are we learning? What are we learning about what's really important for us as Christians, again, individually or communally? Let's have some conversations about that. Think about it and say, Gary, I've been thinking about that, and this is what I've learned, or this is what I've realized, or I have some questions about this. I think that those will be some rich conversations and some rich learnings as we move through this process. So keep the faith. God is still in control, and God's will for us is health and well-being, and trust that that's what God wants us to do. for ourselves and for our community is to keep moving forward with hope and an attitude of abundance. And so I look forward to seeing you soon on Youth Sunday in one way or another. And we'll continue this conversation. Take care, my friends. Blessings.